Well, as it happens, we periodically get to do these great podcasts with people that are great influencers in the business or just really phenomenal people. And then, of course, every once in a while it gets to be a friend of mine. And I'm thrilled today to have you in studio, Larry. Larry Hales is a friend of mine. He's a longtime industry pro, although never on the mortgage side, always on the title and escrow side, and not as an escrow officer, but in a different capacity. But before we get into your career story, introduce yourself, Larry, and tell us a little bit about where Larry comes from and a little bit about your backstory.
Born in Portland, Oregon, Emanuel Hospital, the old Emanuel. Boy. Yeah, old Emanuel Hospital. My family moved to Minnesota. I spent 10 years in Minnesota, where I learned to adapt to cold weather and actually enjoy cold weather. We moved back to Portland, Oregon in 1979. I've been here ever since. Started computers like 1983. I've been in computers for 40 years now. Like that was like astounding that I've owned a computer. Which is a generic way
of saying you've been affiliated or affectionate towards technology for a long time.
Always. I remember seeing my very first computer and just being like, I know I want that.
Here's a great story. When I was a young boy, my dad was still alive, so I couldn't have been too old. He moved from he was an aeronautical engineer that transitioned from working for Boeing Commercial Airplane Corporation to Boeing Computer Services. And he took us out to the BCS building in downtown Seattle at Plant 2 and showed us their computer operations. It was this massive room of 4-foot tall computers that occupied this enormous space that probably couldn't do the computing that my smartphone does right now or your watch does, but it was amazing. And we're sitting there in awe of this amazing computing capacity, but that was my introduction into technology many years ago.
And back in the day, I mean, computers, that's where they were. They were ginormous rooms. Got into marketing and computer graphics pretty early on through a neighbor who was teaching at the high school. She was like, I think you'd be really good at this. My father and my grandfather were both sign painters. So it was kind of a natural flow for me to be creative and have this creative outlet. That was kind of my first foray into printing. Worked in printing for close to 20 years. Technology just decimated the industry.
Right.
You know, people didn't need analog printing anymore. The digital was the way to go, and they didn't need 1,000 copies. Now we only need 100. So quickly had to learn how to transition to a new job. A friend of mine worked for a title company, and I happened to be there one day, and she's like, hey, you're kind of techie and geeky, and you can actually talk like non-techie to actual people. We should hire you on as a tech sales representative to go out and help real estate agents and loan officers incorporate technology into their business.
That was First American.
At the time, it was Pacific Northwest Title. It was pre-First American.
Pre-Fatco.
Yeah.
All right. But they had enough vision to say, we're in a business that isn't necessarily very sophisticated. Technology's coming on like a storm, and we better get ahead of the curve.
And they were definitely ahead of the curve.
Yeah, they were.
Yeah. They had a technology guy where if you had something that was challenging in your business, we can bring in a concierge. Also, like a concierge service is kind of what it was at the time. And I quickly made friends with a lot of real estate agents, learned the real estate agent marketing game more than anything. I was not exposed to real estate. I didn't really even know what title was, even though I'd bought a house at the time.
And you now worked as a marketing representative for a title
company. Yeah.
And what's fascinating about your story is that you got into the business at an interesting time. What year did you get into the business?
Yes, 2008.
What was going on in the industry in 2008? We were booming, right? Things were just going gangbusters.
Man, it was crazy at the time. There were people losing their jobs left and right.
The bottom had literally fallen out of the market.
It was the rock bottom.
Yeah.
Yep, it was
they
rock
don't call
bottom.
it the Great Recession for nothing.
A couple of escrow officers had actually lost their job at this company. And then they bring in a tech marketing guy. Like, I think their thought process was, we have to keep up with the Joneses. And the Joneses was a new title company that had just entered into the market at the time called WFG. And they had a technology marketing guy too. So they were like, well, we're going to bring in one too so that we can keep up with the Joneses.
But even if they were competing with another company that had seen that opportunity and or were trying to capitalize on it, they still was visionary. Especially in 2008. I mean, and tragic for anybody that lost their job in that time. But what's needed in that market isn't more people closing escrow because there's no escrow to close.
Right.
What's needed is how are we going to survive when this market does turn? How are we going to be positioned as an industry leader when this market does turn? And it sounds like they had an eye for that.
And the value-added services and keeping clients in the door to get more of the actual business. There was still business. There was homes closing.
Sure.
There were just fewer of them.
Few and far between.
So it was like maintaining that their section of the pie.
But the two main referral sources for a title company are, number one, of course, realtors. Behind them would become loan officers, would be loan officers. How were you received initially? Again, we're talking 2008, and we're talking an industry, even though that's not that long ago, we're talking about an industry that's notoriously unsophisticated when it comes to technology, especially back then.
Especially back then.
Yeah. Better now, by far.
Yeah.
That's mostly because a whole lot of younger people have gotten into the game and understand technology better than some of the old guard.
And computer systems got more sophisticated as well.
But how were you received?
By the other people in the title company, I think there was an eyebrow that kind of went up. Like, who is he? They created this position.
People are losing their jobs.
Other people had lost their jobs, and I came in and was operating in this capacity. It took maybe 6-8 months before people were like, I get it now. Okay, I get it now. Oh, so if one of our clients needs some help, we can send this guy out. I was also helping with their internal IT department at the same time because they were like, oh, wait, you know servers and you know IT and you can do some of this fancy stuff and networking and whatnot. So I was kind of utilized in two different ways, not only for the clients who were having those same tech challenges, but for the company that was having those same tech challenges.
But let's go to the customer base, the loan officers and the realtors that you called on. I'm guessing that your initial reception was not cool, but like, I don't get it.
Yeah, there were a few that didn't get it, but the ones that did get it, after a quick meeting were like, hey, my text messages aren't syncing between my devices, or my computer, just up and decided to not work today. And I could come in and be the cavalry and rescue and get their computer back up and get their files back up. And now they're back in business. You develop a reputation of that. Like, hey, if I need something, I'm going to call that guy right there, which was very, very helpful for me to establish that reputation super, super early and just be the go-to guy.
Well, in every business, there's early adopters because every business evolves and changes as technology and science and the tools and resources that become available. So 𝗏𝗏𝗀 eventually and WFG had been early adopters to recognizing the value of someone like yourself in a role to liaise with realtors and loan officers. And when you would call on a mortgage branch or a real estate office, there was probably one or two realtors and or loan officers who would say, oh, I get this and I want your time. And everybody else would be kind of going, yeah, whatever. I got to figure out where to find my next loan. And they didn't get what you were doing, I'm guessing.
They're not my client.
Yet.
Right.
That's the cool part.
Yeah.
Yet.
But when you have other people in the office saying, like, I brought in this guy, he showed me how to do X, Y, Z, and I ended up getting 10 loans out of my database from that. They're like,
now a light goes on.
Hey.
Yeah.
What's it take to make an appointment?
Yeah. Yeah. What exactly? So again, let's go back to 08, 09. What exactly are you doing to help them with their technology? I mean, it's different than today. There was no TikTok. I don't think there was an Instagram. It was barely Facebook.
Just barely. Yeah.
I don't think YouTube was. I don't even think YouTube was.
No. YouTube was around.
It was around, but not meaningful.
It wasn't. Like, real estate agents had no idea of the concept
to the
of
industry
YouTube
anyways.
like they do now. A lot of it was just primarily tech challenges. And when I say tech challenges, my computer crashed. Or
can't get my phone to sync with my Outlook.
Like my email looks different here than it does here, or I need help creating my email signature. Something as simple as an email signature.
So you were tech support. You weren't really marketing.
I was tech support.
You were tech support in a lot of ways.
In a lot of ways, I was tech support.
But that changed fairly quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And again, we're probably being driven here by your own ideas and vision for what this job could be, and the early adopters in the markets that you're calling on, real estate and mortgage.
Right.
Having that same vision. Tell me how that kind of evolved into a
lot of it was social media.
Yeah.
Like as social media kind of came into the foray, like Facebook was this tool where you just posted pictures of your dinner. and maybe an occasional update of, like I'm on the porch reading a book, and
had a grandchild.
It wasn't a marketing platform at the time. In fact, they didn't even have business pages at the time. And I remember when Facebook was like, we're launching business pages. And I was like, I wonder how that's going to work, or like, what's the point with that? When that started developing as a marketing platform and people saw the power of it, the early adopters, there were a couple early adopters here in Vancouver too. Dale Chumley, I went to high school with Dale. He was a super early adopter in this, the Facebook and the Instagram and whatnot. And when people saw success from other people, that's when my job kind of transitioned into this, like, how do we better use technology outside of my computer isn't working to build my business, grow my business, get more business. It really evolved very, very, very quickly.
You became a teacher. You became an instructor.
Which, ironically, I was teaching classes in 1993 at Clark College, 24 years old. I think it was the year I got married. So I was 23, 24 years old. My college instructor at the time, when I left and I was doing what I learned in college, came back and told her all of this cool stuff that's happening in this industry. And she was like, we need to develop a class around this. And so she brought me in as an adjunct faculty, and I ended up teaching 2 classes. And most of the people that I were teaching were twice my age. Here's this 23-year-old kid teaching scanning and image editing in Photoshop, and it was a pretty infant time. Like Photoshop wasn't as advanced as it is now.
But it was cutting edge.
But it was absolutely cutting edge. So I became a teacher pretty quickly back then. I think that experience helped me be able to teach classes to lenders and real estate agents later on as well.
That's a great fit with, of course, the name of our show, and the theme of our show is Lessons from Last Time. And one of the things that's becoming clear is that you, for whatever reason, whatever is in your DNA or your upbringing, nature or nurture, whatever you want to call it, you have a propensity to say yes to opportunity, challenges, new things, like embracing technology. Then
always learn.
Yeah, which is a superpower. Because no is so easy. No, I'm intimidated. That scares me. I don't really fully understand it. I don't want to do the work to understand it. Or, yeah, that'd be cool as a 24-year-old to teach a class at Clark College when everybody else teaching classes is 50.
Why not?
Yeah. Because I understand this stuff and it's coming, and probably nobody else there. No, there probably weren't too many 50-year-olds that could have taught that class because they didn't get it.
And it was very new, cutting edge technology for even Clark College to have this class available as part of their offerings was mind-blowing. I actually ended up hiring 4 people out of that one class that I was teaching at a company that I was working at later on. I have 4 people that I trained up from the ground and brought them on to my company.
So your career's evolving. We're getting past the Great Recession. We're coming out, 2009 showed some improvement. 2010, we're moving towards normalization and things, start to pick up again. How is your role evolving to the marketplace?
Yeah, more real estate agents entering the market, number one.
Yeah, of course.
Like the ones that weren't doing any business kind of fell off of the wayside. 2008, 2009, 2010, things started picking back up again. By 2011, 2012, there were double the amount of real estate agents at that point.
Almost overnight, it seemed.
Double the amount of clients and potential clients for the title company at the time, which is a great problem to have. But if you have skills that are in high demand, and there's a lot of people that are demanding those, it works out pretty good in your favor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then we head back into essentially a boom market. Things get really good again after a while. And and parallel to that, social media has really taken off. It's really becoming not just this cutesy thing that you can share what you had for lunch, but now it's becoming this powerful tool that people are beginning to embrace and understand a little bit better, or figuring out how to leverage.
Right. Or dispelling the misconceptions around it was more than, that's pretty much what my job was early on, because there were a lot of people like, oh, that's a tool. Kids are on that. It's not a marketing tool. And when you can teach a class and show them like, here's the power of the things that you can do, then all of a sudden it's funny. You could watch the light bulbs just go off in their head when they get it. They're like, oh, okay, I understand now. And when those light bulbs go off, you're the hero. Like you're the guy that came in and taught them how to utilize these social media tools to grow their brand and grow their business.
Well, you did that. You also did more than that, because to those who didn't understand technology and were intimidated by it, you made it approachable. You took away some of the fear of, all right, get over the fact that this is technology and just look at it as a tool. It's a tool in your toolkit to use towards your own success. Let's figure out how to use it.
Right.
Maybe you just need to turn the screwdriver around and use the part that has the edge on it, and you can do something with it. You really were a facilitator of breaking down resistance to embracing technology here in this market, for sure.
And making technology attainable for anybody who wanted to take it on.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was the role of my job at the title company, honestly.
But no way they could have known, or even you could have really known in 2008 when you came on board, how this was going to scale.
No, nobody knew.
Yeah.
Nobody knew.
So take us through, the 2012, 15, 16 era. What's happening in your life?
I was working in Portland, primarily. My day consisted of about 4 hours in the car.
Yeah, you were living over here and working in Portland.
I was living over here in Vancouver.
Purgatory.
Yep. And some days I would be in Hillsborough, and I would end my day in Hillsborough at 5 o'clock, 5:15 in the evening, and then 2-hour drive home after that. It got really old really, really quick.
Yeah.
And I remember we went to an internal tech conference somewhere, and I met the two sales reps from First American over here on the Vancouver side. And they were like, we know who you are. We've heard of you. And one of them planted a seed, and she was like, if there's ever an opportunity over here, would you be willing to entertain that? And I thought, well, how great.
And give up my commute?
Yeah. How great would it be to come over here and live and work in a place? And the opportunity presented itself. I moved over here. I had a very well-established reputation and brand over in Portland.
Sure.
So that was tough to give up at the time. Came over here to Vancouver. I'm brand new. I know absolutely nobody, no agents at all. And I literally have to start from scratch as a sales rep this time, not a technology person that's operating in Portland. Now I'm a sales rep and I have to learn how to operate as a
and if people don't understand that distinction, that's a big one. You went from being to customer support, to come alongside your existing customers to bring value to them by helping them with their technology. Right. You were the tech support guy at first, and you later became the social media guy, and now you're a sales rep.
Yeah.
And you don't have that reputation yet.
And now I have to eat what I kill, by the way.
Yeah.
Kill what I eat or eat what I kill. You learn right away where you fit into the marketplace. So what I did is I just said, I'm going to do the same exact thing I was doing over there. Rules and regulations on title insurance over here in Washington were a lot different, which just meant that I had to charge $5 for the class now, and they'll come.
Right.
So I would do classes over here and just charge $5, and I would get 30 people do a class on social media.
So just for clarity, what you're referring to are the differences between the various states' insurance commissioners and how they regulate the title and escrow business in various states. It's not federal regulation that controls the fees you can charge and all. Well, maybe there's some federal rules that control it, but primarily everything you can do and can't do is established by the state insurance commissioner in every state.
Yeah. So at the title company, you could teach a class and not charge anything for it, but it had to be specifically on title and escrow services. Right. If you taught a technology class on social media, it didn't follow in the same lines. You just had to charge money for it.
Right.
And I thought, no, who's going to pay $10 to come see me speak? So I put a couple classes out there to see what happened. Boom, they filled up like quick, because it was such a new thing. That Facebook, Instagram marketing, people were like clamoring for it at the time. Like, how do I use this to get more business?
It was here to stay, obviously, but there was such a void of understanding. Everybody knew how to use it personally for social purposes, right? Everybody, some used it poorly, but everybody at least knew how to use it, right? But very few people knew how to understand how it could be leveraged for business success.
Yeah.
And that's really what you were doing, was teaching them.
That's what I was doing. And that quickly evolved. That built my reputation here in this town. Now I have a good, solid customer database in the Vancouver side. Just continue to teach as many classes as I could.
You're still at First American.
I was still at First American at the time. Yeah. Yep.
But that changed along the way.
Yeah. So I got a call from WFG. They started another company, an offshoot company, kind of along the same of what I was doing in Portland before, with technology support and marketing support. And it sounded like right up my alley. Like everything that they were saying, it just sounded like that's me. You know, when they were talking about the job description, I was like, that's me. That's what I do. Took that job at WFG. Was there for 7 years, almost 7 years. Yeah. And that brought us to June of last year, when I decided that I didn't like having a cushy salary anymore. I was going to become a serial entrepreneur and start a couple of companies myself.
And I want to get into that story because it's a fascinating story, and I love the journey that you're on right now. And I want to talk a little bit about KFA and your role there, but most importantly about just kind of what you're doing as an entrepreneur. But let's go back 6 or 7 years. You're working for First American.
Actually, I know I was working for WFG at the time.
Oh, you were?
Yeah.
Okay. So you're established with WFG.
Yep.
You're a sales rep doing business. You entertain a little bit. You go do some lunches. You go home and have dinner with your family and sit around and watch sitcoms or do whatever your life. Describe Larry at that time.
Man, those lunches and those happy hours, like taking clients out to lunch a couple of times a week. Next thing you know, where did my pants don't fit anymore? Like, what's going on here?
Go shopping.
Yeah. And then the happy hours and the late nights and everything else, it took its toll on me physically. My body was going through, I'm getting older, of course,
Unfortunately at the same time.
Yeah. And I'm eyeballing this number 50 coming down. I can see the 50 light at the end of the tunnel, and I still haven't done the things that I wanted to do, at that time. And I remember driving across the bridge, the I-205 bridge, and I looked over and I saw Mount Hood sitting there, and I was like, what would it take to get to the top of that mountain right there? Like, I've always wanted to do this. Like driving across that bridge every day, and you always looked over at that mountain. When I moved here in 1979, that mountain was one of the first things I saw and fell in love with. And I've always wanted to get to the top of that, and I never did. And I was like, you know what? Now is the time. I joined a gym. So instead of spending 2 hours in traffic, I was at First American at the time, because I was still working in Portland.
I thought so.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yep. And so instead of spending 2 hours in traffic, I joined a gym. I would go to the gym after and then spend 2 hours there instead, and then drive home. And it would take me 15, 20 minutes to drive home.
What a fundamental paradigm shift. Just the mentality of that alone. I've been able to carve out a niche where I'm no longer having to sit in traffic for 2 hours because I left my Portland gig. I did have to reinvent myself a little bit, but it kind of feels like I'm doing the same thing with a different title.
Yep.
And instead of wasting 2 or more hours a day in traffic, I'm going to go spend those investing in myself and my health, which has nothing to do with my business, except it does.
It did everything for me, actually. Yes. I lacked discipline.
Yeah.
Like there was no discipline. I would get up in the morning and it would be the same routine. It was like Groundhog Day every single day. And not having that discipline to do the hard things or do the work, or do the things you didn't want to do.
Right.
And going to the gym is hard.
Yeah.
And if you're 60 pounds overweight, it's even harder. So finding the motivation, and I was doing this by myself at the time. I just made a conscious decision that one day, like, okay, I'm tired of being lazy and tired of eating fast food, 3 times a day. And I remember being at the gym and stepping on the scale, and I was over 200 at the time. And like the scales, they go in the 20-pound increments,
right.
Like 160, 180, 200. And I remember having to put it over to the 200 and then move that scale up just a little tiny bit. Yeah.
Analog scale where you're actually moving the weight to.
Yeah. And I remember the day that I got to move it down to 180 and then move the scale up. I'm like, okay, I'm under 200. Okay. So I'm making some progress. And then I remember the day that I got to move it down to 160 and move the scale up from there. And then I remember the day that I got to move it down to 140 and just seeing that progression going forward, that was motivation by itself, you know, because once you start that process, the weight just melts off you.
If you are watching this podcast and you're in the mortgage industry and you haven't checked out the Knowledge Coop, you definitely need to dive into the Knowledge Coop. In there, you will find content and community that will help you grow as an individual by learning everything there is to know about the mortgage industry. If you think you know everything, just dive in and take some classes because there's always something more you can learn. To be successful in this business, you've got to continually learn. In addition, if you're a company and you want to teach your people in your own environment, we've got that in the Knowledge Coop Enterprise Services. So reach out to us, check out knowledgecoop.com. Definitely join Coop Plus. Let's get back to the podcast.
Well, I've always said discipline begets discipline.
Mm-hmm.
So if you commit to going to the gym for a couple hours a day and you're not eating fast food, well, you're not eating fast food in part because you're sitting there on a treadmill or an elliptical or pushing weight for a couple hours a day going, wait a minute, how much more do I have to do if I'm going to eat another Big Mac?
Right.
I don't want to eat another Big Mac. I want to keep doing this and eat less of that bad crap so I can get the result I want.
I used to call it saving the calories.
There you go.
Like somebody would be like, hey, we got cake in the break room. And I was like, I'm saving the calories for later.
Because the truth is, weight loss for most people, there are some medical conditions that fall outside of this, but for most people, weight loss is math.
Yeah.
Calories in, calories out.
That's 100%.
Quality of calories in
Yeah.
and amount of calories in, and some way of burning calories that keeps you moving and mobile and active.
The quality of calories going in wasn't always great, but
Sure.
you know, as long as the
process,
as
right?
long as the quality of calories going out was great, you know, we were good. And then I got this stupid idea. I remember the year I was turning 50, I had this idea. I was like, I want to do something big. Well, I set this goal that is so high, like I don't think I can achieve it. Right? Just to see, number one, if I could do it. I'd never run a marathon in my life. Never. The longest I'd run is maybe a half marathon at the time. And I was like, I should run.
Wait, hang on just a minute. I got to interrupt you because you're skipping a whole lot of stuff. You went from being overweight and starting to go to the gym to I've run a half marathon. That process of deciding to get in shape and then to start running on a regular basis as a activity called exercise, but also as a passion. As an outlet.
Yeah.
That's its own process as well, because you had to get from, I want to get in shape, I'm going to do a little exercise, to I'm going to start running.
Right.
That's different. And then I'm going to run a half marathon. That's a lot of miles.
It was a lot of miles. And running was a part of my regular weight loss regimen anyway. Yeah. It had become hiking. I loved hiking. I still love hiking.
We share that love.
And what I discovered is I can use hiking as an outlet, kind of similar to running,
Right.
and they kind of go hand in hand. Like if you're fit and you can run a 10K in 30 minutes, 10 minutes a mile, when you go out and hike, you can hike forever.
Yeah.
Like
even on Dog Mountain.
Even on Dog Mountain. You know, I can do a triple on Dog Mountain.
Yeah, don't tell me that.
Triple on Dog Mountain with 40 pounds on my back. Right. And then go out and run 10 miles the next day.
And I, as a guy who's conquered dog and never done a double, much less a triple, if you're watching or listening to this podcast, you just have to know a single on Dog Mountain is a pretty damn good workout.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah. So with no pack or just a little day pack with a Gore-Tex in it in case it's raining when you get up top. But if you're doing a triple, here's a funny brief story. I did Dog Mountain one time. Great through the cover. And then when you break out from the cover on that last, whatever it is, to the ascent to the summit, it was blowing sideways, raining hard. And so I get to the top, I eat my little peanut butter and apples under the shelter of a tree, and I'm real proud of myself for accomplishing it. And I start to work my way down. And right back when you come back under the tree line, under the cover, I ran into a group of, 4 or 5 women who were coming up, and they were in shorts and sleeveless shirts. And me gonna mansplain to them how to hike. Actually, I was just trying to be kind and thoughtful, but it probably came across as mansplaining or excessive chivalry. I said, "Hey, ladies, have a great day. By the way, it's blowing and raining pretty hard up there. You might want to gear up before you get out from under the tree line." They said, "Oh yeah, we know. We're a little group called the Daily Doubles. This is our second time up today." And I sheepishly hung my head and walked on down the trail. The saddest part about that story is I walked down the trail. my knees don't like going down, so it has to go a little bit slower than most people. But by the time I got to the car, they had finished their second, gone down the other side, the other loop trail, and beat me to the parking lot. So that's my fun story about dog.
Yep.
You started running, and then you got to a place where you could do triples on Dog Mountain. That's just a workout, dude.
Yeah. And when we'd be home by lunchtime.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'd do. Then it became a race. Like, how fast can we get to the top? You know, like, let's see if we can beat our time to the top and beat our time to the top and to the bottom. And then how fast can we do a double? And then how fast can we do a triple? And we thought we were pretty crazy at the time, but there were guys out there. Like, I knew a guy that did like 12 trips up and down Dog Mountain. And that's like, when you're doing triples, you think you're the king of the world.
Right.
And then you're like, yeah, we did 3. And he's like, oh yeah, I did 6 yesterday. And you're like, oh, okay.
But here's the beautiful thing about that, Larry. I can do 1 and be a little sheepish when I went into those ladies who were the daily doubles. And yet, when I get to the bottom, I get to the car, I still feel like I conquered the world. And I'm so happy with what I did that I got off the couch, I got out and I did dog. I got a great workout, even if it was just 1 and other people did 2 or 3 or 6 or whatever. And if you do your triple, you do your 3, and you find out somebody who does 6, you still are the king of the world because you did something very few people are doing.
You still feel pretty accomplished.
Yeah.
You
know, I don't want to go too far down this road, but I do in some later episode. I told Ken one of these days I'm going to have somebody in studio where I take a blanket and cover up the words lessons from, and we just talk about this notion of last time. You talked about you looking a little bit down the road towards 50 and the things you wanted to do. And the truth of the matter is you weren't promised 50.
No.
And you weren't promised doing triples on Dog Mountain. All you knew is that you were out of shape and you wanted to get into shape, and that time was not your ally at this point, that it was becoming rapidly your enemy. And you chose to take action. And there's going to be a last time that you go out for a hike. I don't think that's morbid at all. I think it's actually a beautiful truth about life. 1 out of 1 people die, and there's going to be a last time. I'm physically unable to play football with my son and his friends like I used to. I can still go out there and throw the ball around, but I can't compete like that.
So there was a last time.
There was a last time where I could really compete. There's a last time for everything. There's a last time you'll have a conversation with somebody you care about. There's a last time. And the ability to look at Mount Hood driving across 205 and think 50's coming, time is, the hourglass is draining. I got stuff I want to do. That's as relevant to lessons from last time as anything I can think of.
Yep. When you have that in your sights every single day when you drive across that bridge and you see it, and something that you've always wanted to do and you've never done it.
So it would have been enough for a chubby title rep to decide to get his act together and start working out and get in shape and accomplish something extraordinary like a triple on Dog Mountain. That's enough. You've gotten in shape. If you can do that, you're in shape. But it wasn't quite enough for you, was it?
No. You know, what I discovered is like this whole adventurous side of Larry. And there were things out there that we could do that I never even thought would be possible. Climbing mountains, you know, climbing a mountain, climbing a second mountain, climbing a third mountain, a fourth mountain, you know, all of it, ice climbing, learning how to ice climb. And when you have that much time and that much energy and all these things that the new version of my body had helped me afford, I could go out and do all these fun things, which was great. And I'm still young enough to be able to do it, but not so old that I can't enjoy it. So that's where the fun really happened. And I remember like COVID year, the year after we ran the 50, I was arguably in the best shape I've ever been in my entire life. I think I was skinnier than I was even in high school. And have you ever done Mountain Defiance?
No.
Okay. It's a beast. 5 miles, 5,000 feet of elevation gain, right?
Oh.
And so me and my buddies, a couple weeks off of doing our 50-mile ultra marathon, we go out there. Like, I wonder how fast we can make it to the top. We made it to the top in under 2 hours. Like, and I just remember thinking, nothing is impossible right now. Like, all this hard work that you've put in to building this, like, I can do anything. Now, we ran all the way around Mount Hood, 42 miles around Mount Hood in a single day. Actually, it was less than a single day. It was like 12 hours.
I followed it.
And we ran all the way around Mount St. Helens that same year. It was like all of these things that just kind of all came full circle. All the things that I wanted to do and that I waited to do for so long, now I could do them because I had this fitness level that was just astronomical.
Well, you had a fitness level because you made choices and you committed to doing it. You know, we had our dear friend Daniel 𝗪𝗿𝗄𝗏 in here a few weeks back. He's the president and CEO of Building Champions, a coaching company down out of Lake Oswego. And they serve, you know, I met him. They were primarily a mortgage industry coaching company. They've now diversified into a variety of different verticals where they serve a lot of different industries. But Daniel talks about this idea of begin with the end in mind. I phrase it like this: our doing should come from our being, not vice versa.
Right.
What we do should be an extension of who we are. And getting to there requires a recognition of what it is we want to be and then a willingness. So when you break down the Building Champions model, you talk about you create a life plan first. You don't start with a business plan, you create a life plan, because your business plan should simply be an extension of the life you want to end up with, not vice versa. Otherwise, you end up creating a business and what's left over is the life you get. And that's inverse to the way it should be, right? But
genius.
After life plan, you put together a business vision. You get this kind of 40,000 foot view of what you want your business to look like. Then you put your business plan in place, and the final thing you do is your priority management, the things that are required the steps that are required
to get me to this point.
Because you don't drive down 205 Bridge as a chubby title rep and go, I want to climb that one day, and then a week later go climb it, because you'll be dead.
Oh yeah.
And the process you were willing to put yourself through to achieve that goal, you kind of just skipped over. Oh, and then I did a 50-mile ultra marathon after running a half marathon. There's a whole lot of training that went into that.
Oh.
Tell me the mountains you've summited here in the local, well, whatever, all the mountains you've summited.
Hood.
Multiple
6 or
times.
7 times. Yeah, a couple of different routes.
Could you have imagined that driving across that bridge?
No.
With a gut hanging over your belt?
No.
Yeah.
And I remember the first time summiting that and just crying.
Yeah.
Crying like a baby.
Yeah.
I can't believe I'm standing here. I can't believe I'm looking at what I'm looking at. And
so Hood multiple times.
yeah, Hood.
Little mountain up north called Rainier, I believe.
Rainier, yeah. That took me 3 tries to get to the top of Rainier. First time was I carried too much weight, I overexerted myself. I wasn't in as good a shape as I thought I should have been. We ended up turning around on 𝗪𝗵𝒺𝗲. Aptly named 𝗪𝗪𝒺𝒺𝗲, by the way.
You probably weren't the first.
No. In fact, I have a picture from 𝗪𝗪𝒺𝒺𝗲 and talking about, now I know why they call it 𝗪𝗪𝒺𝒺𝒺𝒺. Second time we tried, I failed again miserably. Just still not in the best of shape. We were trying to ski it at the time, and I wasn't a great skier. And we ended up just turning around and coming back home. And then the third time I just decided, we're going to do it this time. And ironically, it was 2 weeks after we ran the 50-mile ultra marathon. So we were in the best shape of our entire life. And man, we flew up that mountain so fast.
But you also benefited from those 2 times of failure.
Yeah.
In the context of this.
Yeah. I knew what I was up against.
Yes.
Yeah. I knew how I failed and why I failed the first 2 times, and took lessons from that. In fact, I underpacked on the 3rd time, which
can be dangerous.
Yeah, okay, especially if one of the things that you underpack is enough gas to boil water.
Right.
So I was a little dehydrated, coming back from that, but we made it.
Well, I can tell you candidly that, first of all, none of my experiences mirror what you've disciplined your body to go through so that you can achieve the things you wanted to achieve. But you were an inspiration to me amongst a number of people that were inspirations, including my dear friend Kyra West, who's a realtor over in the Portland area, who had done the Camino twice, and she became my Camino advisor. But also watching you, I'm a heavily surgically repaired former football player who's kind of, I tipped the scales at 260 a few years ago, and I kind of excused all that because, my knees have been surgically repaired. I've had back surgery, cervical fusion in my spine. I've had both shoulders fixed. Most of my fingers have been broken at least once. I've had hernia surgery. I mean, I can go down this list of surgeries from playing that lovely game of football. And I used it as an excuse for not being in the kind of shape I could have been in. So fast forward, my friend Kyra did the Camino. You're doing all this crazy stuff. And I'm going, I got to do the Camino. It's been on my heart for a long time. So here's your deal, Kirk. My deal I made with myself was you're going to lose your pack weight. You can't afford to go do the Camino at 260 and then put 20 or 25 pounds of additional weight on your knees, back, hips. You're going to lose your pack weight at least, or you're not doing it. So that led into a daily set of practices that led to not too many months down the road, but it took months, not weeks. And it didn't come off at first, but it started to come off. And little by little, I lost 35 pounds, which was more than my pack weight by a good bit. And I began the Camino at 230, 232. Is how I put my pack on at 232 and started walking. I finished the Camino at 211, but I started the Camino at 232. And it began this change of mindset about what I'm capable of doing at that time, 58 years of age.
Powerful, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's not climbing Rainier or Everest or anything like that, but it's 15 miles of walking every day. And some of it, you're going up and over the Pyrenees Mountains. You got some good elevation gains. And you're doing it for 33 days in a row. You don't get a break. It's 33 days of 12 to 15 miles a day. And you just get up in the morning and you go. And I did it in part because people like Kyra and people like you who proved what can be done. And what a marvelous lesson from last time to have gained enough determination to not accept the present as my reality and to be willing to put in the work to create a different reality. That's powerful stuff.
It's so much work.
Yeah.
It's so much work.
Yeah.
I mean, you look back, like what it took to get there, even like running the 50-mile ultra marathon. I'd never run a marathon before. And I signed up for a 50-mile. I don't even like to drive 50 miles. And now I'm going to run 50 miles. And I remember when we bought the training plan, because you buy a training plan from a coach. We bought this training plan and he said, before you even start this training plan, you have to be at 30 miles a week of running. And I was like, 30 miles a week?
It's a marathon a week.
Who runs 30 miles a week?
More than a marathon a week.
You know?
Yeah.
So literally I spent the entire summer getting my mileage up to 30 miles a week just so that we could start the training plan. And I just remember looking back on it now, like how absurd it sounded at the time. Like, what did I sign myself up for? What did I get in for? Like, I can't, if my friends thought I was absolutely insane, then they joined me.
Well, going back to the Building Champions model, you have to have a compelling vision of what you're trying to accomplish. It's got to be consistent with who you want to be and what you want your life to look like. And then you have to have the daily, weekly, monthly disciplines mapped out on how you're going to get there.
Right.
Or it's just a good intention. Because you can have all that stuff in place and all the vision and beautifully written, bound in leather. And if you don't do the daily disciplines, the sweat, the shin splints, the blisters, the fatigue, the sense of, I really can't do this. I've bitten off more than I can chew. And then working through that.
Oh man, there were so many times during the training. I remember looking at the training plan and seeing a 22-mile day on the training plan on a Saturday. And we had 22 miles in the morning and then an 8-mile run at night. And I just remember like looking at that on the schedule and just being like, what did I sign myself up for? This is impossible. This is impossible. Like, who can run 30 miles in an entire day? In a training cycle. This was in a training cycle. It wasn't even like a real, I guess. So I remember getting to that day and doing that 22 miles and coming home and mowing the lawn, right? I mowed the lawn. I had my lawn mowing shoes on and my buddy calls me and he's like, are you ready to do the 8? I'm like, yeah, let's go. I forgot to change out of my lawn mowing shoes. And we went to Lackmas Lake and ran 8 miles in a pair of lawn mowing shoes. And I remember we got done. I came home, I made dinner and did a couple other things and got some work done. And like, it was like just another normal day.
Well, it's a powerful message, Larry. And it's powerful because a lot of people could see how cool it would be to stand on the top of Hood crying at the accomplishment and witnessing that magnificent panorama that you could see from up there. And literally being emotional about the accomplishment. But the problem isn't that we can't see that vicariously. It's that no one wants to pay the price to get there. But the beauty is in that journey. You talk about being able to go out and run that 8-miler in your lawn mowing shoes after a 30-miler. only happened because of all the work you did before. You thought it was going to kick your butt.
Yeah.
And you just went out and did it in the wrong kind of shoes and finished it and came home and made dinner. And it really was kind of okay, check.
Got up and ran 12 miles the next day too.
Yeah.
So, and you're right. The beauty is in the journey. And I don't think you realize it at the time when you're looking at it. You're looking at the end goal. Yeah. And I didn't realize at the time that all of the training was part of the journey to get to the end. The hardest part was finishing that 50 and going, what am I going to do next?
Yeah. How do you top that one?
Like, how do I top that? Oh, let's go climb Mount Rainier. Yeah, that sounds like a great idea. So we went out, we climbed Mountain Defiance, did a quick little training run on Mountain Defiance, came back, did it in record time. I remember thinking, I didn't even think it was possible to do it that fast. We did it that fast. Came home, we packed our stuff, we went up and climbed Mount Rainier like shortly thereafter.
The lessons that are applicable to people who are mortgage professionals or real estate professionals or any kind of professional are so obvious, but I think it's worth our time here to talk just briefly about them. We you were in studio not long ago and talking about social media marketing and giving kind of a tutorial on how people can use social media and how different the social media platforms are. One of the key components was knowing your audience. And knowing your audience requires a little bit of homework, research, effort to know your audience. Before you start putting a message out there, you got to know who you're messaging. I referenced my mentor, my vicarious mentor, Seth Godin, whose 3 rules of anything you do, who's it for, what is it for, and what change do you seek to achieve, or what difference do you want to make? Yep. Or you can recraft that 3rd one in a variety of different ways. The problem isn't people can't have a vision. If you get in the mortgage business, you could say, oh, that Matt Ellerding, he lives in a nice house and he crushes volume. I want to be like Matt. Great. Are you willing to put in the work that Matt's put in?
Most people aren't.
No.
Nope.
But if you are, there's a Mount Hood summit in your future, and it might be in the mortgage business or in real estate or in some other vertical that we haven't even discussed or can't imagine, but it's
the rewards are so great. So great. It's funny, there's a lot of parallels between training for a marathon and marketing too. In fact, I wrote a blog post on this talking about like getting up and actually getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning to go do a 10-mile run before you even go to work, right? That takes some discipline to set the alarm, get out of bed, put on your running shoes, and get out there in the dark and the wet and go do it. Same thing with marketing. Like you have to be willing to dig your heels in and get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and craft those marketing messages and get that content.
It's the grunt work. It's the grunt. Daily grind that leads to the President's Club or whatever the level of achievement is that you're trying to accomplish, the financial freedom that you're looking for, or whatever.
And if you're consistent with it, you're going to finish your 50-mile ultra. If you're consistent with it, you're going to reap the benefits in the business sense of doing that same thing.
If you're consistent with it, it begins to define who you are and how you approach life. And maybe this is a great point to start wrapping up our conversation with. In the context of covering up the top half of this slide and the conversations I want to have on last time, when you get to that last time, you get to look back and go, life well lived. Or last time you originate a loan or a real estate transaction. Maybe it's not the ultimate last time. Maybe it's just the conclusion of a career. You get to look back and go, I did it. I did it the way I wanted to do it. I worked my tail off and I reaped the results because I was willing to put in the effort, and I look back on it with favor, not regret.
And I think everybody else looks at you in a different light as well.
Yeah, and that's great. But the one you really answer to is the one in the mirror.
Right.
And you got to be okay with that person. You got to be okay with that person. And I agree with you. I mean, you can have regard for other people, and that's beautiful. And you can inspire other people because you've been inspired by other people.
I didn't know I could inspire anybody.
Yeah, well, you were contributing to my inspiration to go do a Camino. And I walked into Santiago after 500 miles of walking. If you told me I was going to walk for 500 miles in a month, I would have said, you're crazy. Nobody could do that.
I remember watching the video.
I walked, you walk under this little, I don't know what it's called, archway.
The arch, yep.
And you walk into this huge plaza. All along the way, when you start in St. John Pied de Port, there's a sign that says Santiago, 798 kilometers, right? And you have deviations along the way. And all along the way, they count down the kilometers. And it doesn't seem like it's making much progress at first, but then eventually you start to see it. When you get to Santiago, there's a brass or some sort of big medallion in the center of the courtyard, embedded in the ground in the courtyard cobblestone that says 0.0.
Yeah.
And you walk in there and you're with all these other people and you made it. And you wonder how, but you did. And as we're standing in that courtyard, the group of friends that I had assembled, because I did it completely solo, and now I have 15 dear friends that I still stay in touch with today. There were people we met on the Camino that were from a group called 𝗟𝗵𝗵𝗴𝗲. These were people who were in wheelchairs, paraplegics or quadriplegics, who couldn't walk the Camino. And it began with this guy whose friend got paralyzed in some accident, and he wanted to do the Camino. It was one of his life ambitions. So his buddy said, I'll do it with you and I'll push you. And that turned into an organization called 𝗟𝗵𝗵𝗴𝗲. As I'm standing in the plaza at Santiago de Compostela, proud of myself for my accomplishment, and rightly so. There hundreds of people in the plaza, right? People who were coming in from far away in the corner where that archway was. There's just applause that starts, and then it turns into a roar, and there's this whole group of 15 or 20 𝗟𝗵𝗵𝗴𝗲 people rolling in who just did the same exact Camino I did for the most part. And they're rolling in 500 miles later, and the whole plaza is just erupting because somebody willing to do that is inspiring.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing to see that. And I stood there with tears rolling down my cheeks going, wow, I'm proud of my accomplishment. That is an accomplishment.
That's an accomplishment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's extraordinary. Human nature is amazing. So look, buddy, I could go on and on and on with this for hours. I love what you've done with your life. I love the difference you've made in the market, the difference you've made with realtors and loan officers to make them better. You really have made people better at what they're doing.
It's my goal every single day.
So do me a favor. If people want to talk to you, tell them how they get a hold of you. Hung your own shingle out. You're doing your own thing now. How do people get a hold of Larry Hales?
Just go to my website, 𝗟𝗿𝗄𝗏.
Okay.
Yeah. You'll find all the information that you want about
There
me
you go.
there.
Reach out there.
Yep.
Well, we like
found
to,
on every social media.
Sure, of course.
Yeah.
Not hard to find. You can call me. I can tell you how to get a hold of him. Final question we like to end with, and this is one that I really love, and so does Ken. Ken's not here today, for those of you that don't know. So he's off on a trip, and we're excited about what's going to come as a result of that trip. But here's our final question for you. If you could, hop in the DeLorean and go back in time to have a conversation with 12 or 14-year-old Larry, what would you tell him other than buy Google?
Yeah. Wow. Save your money. Yeah. Start planning for retirement early. I didn't plan early enough.
Sure.
And, now here I am 55 years old, looking at retirement on the horizon and wishing that there was more in that retirement account. But yeah, save your money and keep going. Don't give up.
That's characteristic of your life, my friend.
Don't give up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, listen, buddy, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it. It's always great talk. I know your story pretty well, so it's fun to kind of be able to talk with you and have it come out again for an audience that in large part probably hasn't heard your story.
Thanks, man.
Yeah. To go from chubby title rep to 50-mile ultramarathoner and summiting Mount Rainier, just to remind people of what's possible. It's just really a cool story.
Don't wait.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good advice for 12 or 14-year-old Larry too.
Yeah. Don't wait until it's too late.
Right on.
I almost did.
Because there will be a last time.
I almost did. Yeah. I'm not done yet.
Right on.
Yeah.
Thanks, buddy. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.